Welcome back to the Best Worst Thing podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Lewa. My next guest is the director for the Division of Behavioral Health for the Indian Health Services, a division of the Federal Health Program for American Indian and Alaska Natives. This division is integrated health and wellness focused on raising the health status of AIAN people to the highest level possible. Originally from Blue Canyon, Arizona, she received her doctorate at Arizona State University. But her path to this career is something that I'm very excited to explore with her. I heard her talk briefly at a group meeting for work, and I just thought, I have to get her on the podcast. And so I'm so excited that you get a chance to represent your story separate from your career. And so I want to say welcome, Dr. Glorinda Segay.
Yes, thank you. Yate, thank you. So Yate means hello in Navajo. And so I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Glorinda Segay. That was my given name by my parents. And my parents are Gloria and Francis Segay. So it's in our Navajo way to always identify, where we come from. And so I am originally from the Navajo Nation. So great Navajo Nation. Yay. Yeah. And so basically it's about the size of West Virginia, just to give everyone a visual. And about over 350,000 tribally enrolled Navajo members. So I come from a big tribe. And so basically we all have different, clans. And so I'll introduce my clan to my people out there. And so so that's my plan. And also hello to you and greetings to all you listeners all over. Thank you for joining us. I'm very excited. And so I just want to put forward my disclaimer. So this is my story. It's not affiliated with my career with Indian Health Services. So I just wanted to share my story and get that out there to you all. And just as indicated, Joshua introduced me. And so basically my role of what he had made mention, with Division of Behavioral Health Services. So I appreciate that kind introduction. So I'll give it back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I'm just excited to have you. I love your energy, and I just loved hearing your story. And again, we're going to get into that a little bit more here. Just super excited. I got chills when you were saying your greeting and introducing your tribe to the group, and just something just really powerful about that moment. So I know this obviously is your own path and your own story, but what does your current role exist of? Can you tell us a little bit more about that role?
Sure. Well, basically, my role is leadership, directorship, and so previously I was basically appointed actually by our Navajo administration and was at the time President Russell Begay. So I'm very honored out of all the respected and distinguished, doctors and professionals out there. He chose me, and he asked me to go ahead and lead his division of health, Navajo Nation Division of Health. And so it's a really big division, 16 programs, overseeing the whole Navajo, healthcare delivery system. And so I was charged there with, like special diabetes program, basically, helping to set up wellness centers and programs, nutrition programs for our Navajo people, basically using federal governments and advocating, for them. We had really big events like the Just Move It, where, this was before COVID, and a lot of people would meet up after work and we would do fun runs, fun walks. It was just amazing to see the Navajo people. Then areas like the food distribution program, so through treaties, we still get some food there to Navajo Nation. Government cheese is the absolute best. Can never go wrong. So, just programs like that, even the WIC, Women, Infant, and Children program. So that too, providing and advocating to make sure that our parents, a lot of young parents that we have there, have the benefit of, the education, nutritious education, and, the well-being of the development of a child, so always putting that education out, encouraging them, breastfeeding, things of that nature. Very, very important, for upbringing. So those are just some of the programs that I was tailored to. Of course, the behavioral health. So it's now known as the Division of Behavioral and Mental Health Services. And so that was my first love, my passion, and basically, really sitting down, providing direct patient care, in that sense, and listening to, what they presented with, as far as alcohol abuse and just a lot of trauma, various traumas, suicide, a lot of depression, so trying to help my people overcome, providing that resilience in a sense, through my training. And so that was one program. So that basically, took me on a journey just with like the tribal council when they appointed me, in learning about legislation, learning about, what's the Navajo Nation's pillars, their health pillars moving forward, with the administration at the time. And so that brought me all over. I went to Alaska, Washington, Seattle, Minnesota. It was wonderful. And being a res girl, raised in the shed, I was like, wow, wide-eyed and always so very appreciative, just trying different meals. I had a yak burger in Alaska one time. I had a moose pizza, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm probably not supposed to eat this. I got to have a ceremony. So Navajos, it seems like we have a lot of rules, I guess, so to speak. But anyhow, so that basically led me into leadership. And that's where, I had an opportunity here where I'm currently at with my career, and where, they gave me a chance, a blessing, and basically, had that confidence and trust in me, to put me in such a position. And to me, it's a high position, being at the highest level of, the government. And now it's more focal to behavioral health services, mental health services. And it's not only for my Navajo now, it's for all my American Indian, Alaska Native people, 574 tribes now. And so looking in their best interests of behavioral health care, especially now with the COVID, this pandemic, a lot of areas that probably you all know you have been experiencing and you have been feeling, just a lot of apprehension, a lot of anxiety, just, not being able to control these measures, these elements, it just really makes us uneasy. And, and then what's to come, that too, what's going to come after this, after we get our vaccine, or maybe after, are we going to go back to not wearing masks? Is it going to be the same? So just a lot of questions that a lot of people have across the board. So, that's kind of where I'm at now currently. And so, but I'm very honored, I'm very happy, and I try my best every day, what can I do? How can I do this? I pray about it. I, just consult with a lot of people that I have trust in, how would I go about this, and knowing that I have greatness on my shoulders, knowing that, I get to speak, I get to advocate, I get to, see this through, and what can I do, with the best of my ability moving forward. So, but, that's pretty much what my current role is in a nutshell. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you for that comprehensive sharing. It really, your current role is so wraparound. It really covers a lot of very areas that impact life, and it's really important. It's interesting you mentioned that government cheese and WIC, and those are, I've been, my family at times have had to take advantage of and utilize the same services, but I'm certain that there may be some other things from your background that, I will be new to me, and things that maybe I'll relate to just the same. And so, I'm kind of curious about your upbringing and your background, and that kind of its influence on your life, this powerful Navajo Nation experience of growing up with such strong culture and commitment. And so I'm kind of curious about your background, your upbringing.
Sure. So I just have vivid memory. So I'm going to be jumping here and there. So put on your seatbelt, get your bottle of water. We'll take you on a ride here. So basically, growing up Navajo on the reservation, I remember that, my reality, I guess, kind of kicked in, and I became conscious at a young age, and we were living in a place called Navajo, New Mexico. So my father worked at an old sawmill there, the Navajo, it was called NFPI. I don't remember what the acronym stand for, but the Navajo Forest Product Industries, I think it was. So there he was a debarker, and so he worked night shift, I remember. And so at the time, because he was employed, we were able to live in employee housings there. And then my father got injured. basically he fell in the machine. It was like the chains, I guess they kind of move in this motion, and he would take care of the logs, as they moved along. And somehow he stepped into the chain there, and it, pretty much tore his leg up pretty good on his left side, I remember. So, because of that, he was unable to work. And of course, him and my mom had to come to a decision, and they decided that, it would be best for us to move back to where I currently, was raised. It's called Blue Canyon, Arizona. And in Navajo, it's the Navajo. So if you want to practice that and say, hey, I learned a Navajo word, it's the Navajo. So we were raised up there, and it's in the mountains. Basically, there was my dad, I remember, he brought us to this open area. There was nothing but sagebrush, dirt, dust, real fine dust. When you step, it just kind of goes all over. And so I remember there was a shed. He put a shed up. It was it was facing the sunrise. As Navajos, we always, good blessings come from the sun. Hayalkash, they call it. And so we were faced that way, and it was wide open. It was just a shed. It had the frame, and then it was like plyboards, And so we took our dishes, whatever we could pack. I remember we had a metal bunk bed frame, with old mattresses, the old school, the striped ones, and and my dad and my mom, they said, "This is where we're going to live," and there was no electricity, no running water. So that's where it started. And there's seven of us. I got seven siblings, actually 7 with me, and same mother, same father. I'm so proud of that. And then my mom and dad been married over 40 years until my dad, he passed. He became a holy person now. So it's been 7 years, and so they raised us. And basically, I remember my older brother and I. His name is David, and I remember David and I. We would. The oldest, so we had to hustle. And I always remember, we would have to get water. My mom would tell us, go fetch water. We lived on top of a hill, so there's a windmill down below. And that windmill, it was a pumping one. I don't know if you remember those old antique, so you pump it. And so my brother and I think I was probably like 8 years old, and my brother was probably around 10. My mom used to give us a 5-gallon bucket each on both sides. So we would be happy running down the hill and get there. We pump the water, and kind of mess around. But man, I used to hate having to bucket 10 gallons back up the hill. And I was 8 years old, and my brother was very kind, and he used to tell me go ahead, and he would wait for me, and we've done it enough times that, basically, I would tell him, oh, go ahead and go, and I develop a technique to where I would bucket one as far as I can, put it down, then run back, get the other bucket and go, and all the way till I got home. And we used that water for everything, for cooking, washing dishes. My mom would bathe us too. She would put us in a tub. It's pretty good. It's like old metal tub, the ones that folks used to do laundry in with the washboard. Mm-hmm. And she'd fill it up with about that much water. And, she would start with the little ones where it's clean water, warm water. She'd build a fire, put it on the stove, warm it up, and then we'd use that same water all the way up to the oldest. And so we weren't able to dump it, anything like that. We bathed like at least twice a week just because of the water. And so, and my mom made it fun too. It was really neat, just a way, we trusted her. We knew she had to do what she had to do, and so just to kind of give you an idea of my upbringing. And then my father, he started to assemble a shack for us next door. Another shack, winter was coming, and basically, he got together some plyboards, and, this time we had a door, and it was like we had little rooms inside, and the floor was dirt floor. And so with that, I remember we made a doorbell for my dad, my brother and I. And so we used some aluminum cans. We put rocks in it, and we put a little wire out the door so he could, shake it and wake us up. And so I remember we did that. It was fun like that. Being children. Not knowing, I guess, the amenities that we could have. But we did our best with what we had. And so then we had to chop wood. My mom, she was a custodian for the tribe at the time. She's a custodian over 30 years. She raised us on a custodian wage, and she would get off at midnight. So that means, we get off the school bus, we go home, there was nobody there for us. So we had to fend for ourselves. We had to cook. We had to chop wood and get the fire going. And, back then, they used to trust us as children, I guess. But nowadays, we're scared, like, no, we can't leave the kids alone. We have all these, like, they can start a fire, they might bother the stove or blow up the microwave. As parents, we kind of really shield our children today. Yeah. But back then we were making fry bread. The fry bread is basically out of dough. You roll some dough and then you flatten it out to a big flat circle, and then you deep fry it in some grease. And, we had to learn these things on our own. And I remember my brothers were scared of the grease splashing. They would put towels on their arms and towels. And then they would be like, your turn to put the fry bread in. No, I did it last time, your turn. So they put their bread in and it would, and then they would, we would cut open the lunch meat from the food distribution. I don't know if you remember, it was the lunch meat. And we used to cut it. We used to call it Balagana because the Navajo, meaning the white man's neck. So anyway, that's a joke, inside Navajo joke. But, so we would get the government cheese and, we would basically make sandwiches and we would eat, and it was neat. The older ones looked out for the little ones. My older brother, myself, we feed the little ones, and did our best, and then get everybody to bed, the fire's going. And we used to sleep on the floor too. And then we had a kerosene lamp. We had the Coleman lamp, the onesie pump, the camping lamps. And we sometimes we were so poor that we couldn't afford kerosene, or any more of the refill bottles. So we would sit and open the fire, and we would lay around the fire and do our homework. That's what we would do. We would lay there. And then, but you had to watch out because sometimes the fire sparks. And here comes an ash, but that's how we were raised. We were raised like that, and we had to wear the same clothes for 3 days sometimes, and because my parents, they pretty much were on a tight budget, and, we never questioned them though. We just always trusted them. And, but on the outside of that, there was a lot of kids, like today, nowadays, they call it bullying, There was a lot of kids who never understood us, where we came from, and so they imposed their will on us. And, you still see that today, a lot of kids picking on other kids for maybe the way their hair is or their skin color or, what family they come from, so they, they tend to bully. And that's how it was back then. They made fun of us mainly for, I guess our financial status. Our hair was greasy sometimes, or we would smell like fry bread, and getting on the bus. You guys smell like fry bread? They made it like it was a bad thing. And, we didn't know any better. It was we were like, it's like, okay, what does that mean? And it would make us feel bad. And that's where, we started getting into bus brawls. We would, defend each other's and like, what'd you say? And so back then we used to say, I'm going to rock you up. I don't know what the word is today now. So it was like, I'm going to rock you up after school, and so, but that's what we went through as siblings growing up, and so fast forward, we continued that. Our parents put us in sports, and of course we were at public school, which was good, so it was free basketball, free cross country. My family, we come from a runners. We have really good bloodline of long-distance runners. My brother Gordon's a couple of individual state champions. My sister Valerie, individual, state champion cross country. My older brother, he still holds these records, and and we would run with Walmart shoes, Pro Wings. Yeah, we would have our tribal clothing system. They used to give out free clothes. And whatever shoes was in there, that was our championship shoes. And, we grew up like that. And we would see our teammates, real nice Mizunos, real nice Brooks, and like, wow, really sharp shoes, but for us, sometimes our shoes were so old that, the bottom would have a hole, the sole would have a hole in it. Sometimes duct tape, put duct tape on. And that's what we used. We competed, and man, it was wonderful. Now that I think about it, I'm like, wow, we were a special breed. And there's still a lot of Navajo families like that. There's Navajo families that grew up like that too, And so, we would be poor and have no money. Like we would go on our trips to our games, and we would see other kids eating Cheetos. They would stop, and what me and my brother used to do is with our Navajo food distribution, we used to make like burritos and kind of pack our own snacks. And when everybody would get off at the store, we would kind of have our little snack there. And, and we were embarrassed. We were embarrassed because we didn't have money. We just kind of like, what? We didn't understand, And so, but now that I look back on it, I was like, oh, okay, them families were blessed. They were fortunate. They had money, and they had a little extra money to get Gatorade. I was really fortunate, and I think through my sports, talents, families came together. I remember just when family came together, and I made varsity basketball. Man, we used to rock the house. We got 7 state titles when Rock High School, and our coach was well known, And so I remember, I used to like wish that our teammate, the girls, we would all vote on a pair of shoes. But man, they used to always pick the most expensive Jordan shoes. Yeah. And I used to kind of put my head down and kind of like, man, where am I going to get how much do they run? Like $150 back then? Where am I going to get $150? And I used to be sad. And sometimes my teammates, they would bully me. Like, you're the only one with no shoes. You're going to mess up our team picture, And I remember they would, say things like that to me. And I used to think like, it used to make me sad, and I was like, wow, and but I remember though that these fans, they knew my situation, that they were older, and here I was so happy. They surprised me with a new pair of Jordans one day. Wow. They gave me the shoes, and I was like, man, I was really, 10 feet tall, I was bulletproof, I was like, all right, I got some shoes, it just made me shine, carrying my shoes home and really taking care of it, putting it in my bag. And then sometimes, they would give me Gatorade, or they knew, and some parents would buy me like a bag of chips and kind of sneak it to me, So that's how it was for myself. My siblings, of course, they all had different experiences, And, but on the spiritual sense of all that, my dad, the late Francis Segay, is a wonderful, beautiful, kind, gracious human being. That's how I think of my father. So generous and so gracious. And he was what we call a roadman. So a roadman basically is, I would say, like a shaman. And he had the gift, he was ordained, to conduct what we call Native American church ceremonies. So a long time ago, I guess I had my great grandma. She has a Navajo name. Long time they have Navajo names. Her name was Atkatnazba, meaning during the war. And basically, to my knowledge, she was born during the war. And what happened was a long time ago, there was the Navajo, the Long Walk. And the Long Walk is the cavalry came in and they captured our people. Wherever they were in the canyons, and they rounded up our people, our elders, the children, and they put them like in a concentration camp. And, it's to my knowledge, where I live, there's a lot of history there in Fort Defiance. So they put him there. And I guess they must have gathered enough. I don't know how that was all developed. They marched him, and I believe it was wintertime, all the way down to Bosque Redondo. And if you look on a map, that's far. That's like, I don't know how many miles, but I guess it took them months. They had to walk. And I understand on the way, and the way I'm told is that our people, they died. They starved on the way, and some of them probably became ill. They were killed there. the children were killed, and so they brought them down, and then they were held there in captivity for, I believe it was 3 years, and in captivity, they were kept there, and that's where the government food ration program started. They incorporated that, and they started to give it out, and that's where our people, we had a couple of chiefs, they say, and we were the only tribes who, we had a couple leaders all the time, and those leaders would negotiate. And so that's when they finally signed a treaty, and I understand that our Navajo women are the first and the only tribal women to negotiate our return back to our original homeland. So there's a lot of tribes now that are displaced from their original homeland, unfortunately. So, but we were fortunate, we went home, we made our way home, and that's when, all these stories, like my grandma, Tkahna's and they gave her an English name. They couldn't spell it, so they called her Tanaba. They gave her Tanaba Chico was her name. So, but she came back, and she grew to be 108 years old.
Wow.
So it was so neat to visit her. She lived in a hogan, like an octagon-shaped house. It was like a studio. In the middle is a fireplace. The floor is ground. Then there's a doorway, of course, to the sun. That's always been like that. And so that's where we would visit her. And, she was still walking at the time, but she was starting to, age, and, she started to kind of, shrink. And then the next thing you know, she was crawling. And she was so hospitable, though. Like when you come visit her, she would invite you in, and then, she would crawl, and she would sit at the fireplace, and then she would take out some hot charcoal, and, she has a little wire. It was like a little wire grill that my great grandpa made. His name was San Chico. And she would put that there on top of the ash, and then she would make dough and bread, and she would cook it on top. And then fried potatoes, she would have a frying pan on top of the ash. And, it was so wonderful now that I think about it. And then she had a little table. So it was a small table. It was short and it was wide. And they used to call it a tea, to my knowledge. And I apologize to my listeners if I have some Navajo listeners out there, if I mispronounce, some of these terms. I apologize for that, especially to my elders. So that she used to tell us "Itnitski," and meaning that bring the little table, bring it in. So we would bring it in, and it was really neat just how we ate with her, and how she basically would get the pan, put it in the center, get the bread, and we would all eat out of one pan. That was the way it was. So we would eat together, talk together. There was no such things today. We have real fancy plates, right? We have the gold, the silver plating, and everybody gets their own, what is it now, portion size, but it wasn't like that back then. We ate together as a family, and there's a lot of teaching to that. Maybe one day when we have time, I'll let you know. So, but she was the one, she noticed a lot of the traumas in our family, in our bloodline. And this is a story my father tells me, and he said that, we started to lose our traditional Navajo ways. So there's a difference between Native American church and traditional Navajo way. So she was concerned about the future generation of her family. So she talked to my dad and told him that, this is what you're going to do. You're going to become a roadman. And he was 8 years old, he said, and he conducted his first peyote ceremony in a teepee. They do it in hogans and teepees nowadays. So that's where it started. So my dad, he studied, and he learned the way of prayers, the rituals, that happen in there, and through the guidance of my great grandma. And so back in 1985, I want to say, fast forward, my dad was ordained from, his name is Francis Matthews. He's from the Oglala Sioux tribe, the Lakota tribe. So they ordained him, meaning that they blessed him with the Sioux fireplace. Meaning when they say that there's different styles depending on the tribe. And so with the different style, they have certain rituals, so they're all different, and different songs, So So he was given that. And so my dad used to use that as ways to help people, as ways when they become, ill, say mentally or physically, when they were stuck in life, the spiritual part of it, he used to pray for the people. He used to help them in that sense. He used to encourage them. And it's an overnight ceremony, about 8-10 hours, and you have to set up the teepee or the hogan. You get all the wood that's going to burn all night. And you get all of the ritual meals, the meat, fruits, and, veggies and the water, Then you have to have help. There's a fire keeper, and there's a person who takes care of the drum. When you sing, he'll beat the drum. Then you have a person who will take care of, they call it the cedar. He has the cedar. It comes from the trees, and, you put it in the fire, and, it burns amber, So that's one way we pray. And then we have other people who are in there, the guests. Then, of course, we have the person of honor, that asks for the ceremony help, and so they make it known, like, what's going on, and they talk about it. And then in there, we use what's called a holy sacrament, is the peyote. We use that in the holy elements. And there's a difference. There's a debate now saying peyote is a hallucinogen, it's a drug. We're pretty well aware of that. But for us, we believe in the elements of water, fire, air, earth. That's how we use it with prayers, and so that's how we were taught. So my dad, many times, he would conduct a service, a ceremony for people that would come, and we would help him. And we would always put teepee up, we would get the wood, and sometimes we didn't have any helpers, and so we would have to play the role. And we helped my dad, and early in the morning, there's a person, she's designated, we call her the water lady, and she's like a mother to everyone. So she comes in early in the morning when the sun is just about to come up. She comes in with the water, and she prays with the water over the people. So beautiful, so wonderful, and offer words of encouragement, really just loving, probably like your mom, the way your mom speaks to you. That genuine, unconditional love, you feel it and it feels good, So like that makes you feel like $1,000,000, and like, oh man, I can do anything, And so, through that, just constant repetitious, helping our father as we got older, we started to sit up. Before we were tired, we would slouch over because everyone sits on the ground. So your back starts hurting. Sometimes we would get a teepee pole. And like, I'm going to sit by the pole, so you get to lean back on the teepee pole. You get it, or you kind of lean on it, like, you lose some of that back pain, hip pain, whatever. And so, but and then our uncles, they were really good to us too. They would speak to us. There was a lot of teachings in there. They would tell us, they would explain what the rituals meant. They would tell us, this is how you incorporate it, and this is what we expect of you. And so that's how it was, especially on my dad's side. We were raised on my dad's side, paternal side of the clan, and so they were very supportive. And my uncle was a veteran. His name is Richard Segay, Vietnam veteran, my vision. And when it was an education meeting, the purpose was for education. They bring all the kids and they round them up. And they used to pass out like a notebook like this. My auntie used to buy notebooks and pens, and she would, our weapons, she would give it to us, and they would throw some cedar in the fire. They would bring the feather, eagle feather, and then they would smudge you with the smoke and tell you, do good in school, climb the ladder. They tell us, you're here, you come back, help your people, like that. So it was wonderful. I always remember. And then when it was over, we had the biggest feast ever. We would feast on fry bread, all our native foods, whatever. And we would pack food for people who were going home, and sometimes, in some cases, we would gift them. We would get blankets, Pendleton, like this back here, gift them. We would give jewelry, like what I have on, just little things to show appreciation. Thank you for coming and staying and sitting all night with us and singing and offering your words, like that. So we would gift them. It was always wonderful. It was wonderful. It was a lot of work, but it was wonderful. So with the spiritual sense, the point I'm getting at is that's what my father embedded in me. There was always teachings. He would always tell me, wake up. Go run early in the morning before the sun. I never understood that teaching. I always wonder, like, what does he mean? So, but as I got older, now I run, and my siblings, we still run a lot. And we run like 5-6 miles. That's kind of our regular, I guess, miles. And, I always thought of my dad. And so what he meant, the way I understand is, when you run in the morning, there's a lot of blessings. When you wake up early, you have the greatest gift you can give yourself, longer life, because you got more time. That's one. Number two, he used to say, find your blessing. You don't even know what's out there until you go run. And when you run in the dark, there's fear. People are scared of the dark because you don't know what's out there. You don't know if you might run into motivation, a bear. You don't know what are out there, and so you can't control those measures. It's scary. It's like, and then plus if you run by yourself, you don't have that protection or backup, and we were raised in the mountains. So in the mountains, it was by ourselves way up there, deep in the mountains. And that's where we would run by ourselves. And sometimes we were lucky our sibling woke up like, come on, let's go run. I don't want to, I'm scared. Come on, Dad's going to sneak us, and we would all go as a group, but we would just be scared running along, But as we got older, like me, there's a lot of times I trained at 4 a.m. when it was winter back home, -25. Oh man, it brings you to life, I tell you. And I was scared sometimes to run by myself. My mom was scared for me. And this was like 3 years ago. She would be like, I don't know if it's a good idea for you to run into deep snow. And it's cold, she used to tell me that. But I always, I just had that faith and trying to understand, teachings in my life, what's my purpose getting out there, and praying. And it was so beautiful and peaceful in the morning, it was always nice. One time there was like a meteor shower and I was running and it was a bright light and it kind of startled me. I was like, oh, I'm ready to do karate, even though I don't know karate. And then and I looked up and oh my goodness, there was a meteor shower. It just went over and I'm like, why is everybody sleeping? You guys need to be awake. Look how beautiful it is, And then there was the last one. It was like the longest shooting star all the way across. Like it just stopped me in my tracks. And I just was like, wow, my eyes started tearing up. I was like, wow, this is okay. And what does that mean? So running back home. And so, but the concept number 2 is when you can basically, you're strengthening your mind, your mental strength to any physical pain that you may endure. Meaning that -25, your fingers are going to be cold, your toes are going to be cold, you're going to be tired. The physical part of it, you're gonna endure that because your mind is strong. You've made your mind strong. So taking that piece of that teaching, you implement it in your life. So you have adversities, travesties, how are you going to get through that? So that's where that Navajo teaching comes in, and so that's where they say, have a strong mind. When you have a strong mind, got a strong body, you can do anything. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter how painful it is. So that's what I learned. And I was like, wow, that's what my dad meant. But he just never directly told me and took out a chart and explained it. He just, and I'm sure like a lot of families are like that. They just do preventive education. I say, don't do this, don't do that. They just tell us that, but they never tell us the reason why. And I'm sure a lot of the different cultures are like that. I don't know. And you're lucky if your mom and dad sat you down and drew a chart and said, this is called hope. This is called love. This is called no lying. This is called, whatever. And they would take it out, and the morals and principles, they would show you, this is what you live by. But I think a lot of us, like for my family, we figured it out on our own through our mistakes. Like I used to be married a long time ago. Yay, I guess my fry bread wasn't good enough. I don't know. But so through that time, it was a painful time for me. I got a divorce, and I was really stuck. I didn't want to be labeled as a divorcee. I wanted to be married like my parents for a long time to one person. I wanted that. I saw their demonstration. I saw their example. I wanted children with just one man. And that was my wish. Those were my wishes. And so my wishes clashed with reality. And it was really hard. And, I cried. I got depressed. And, I was like, man, I'm stuck. And, I just didn't know what to do. But there was that physical abuse happening, that psychological, and just like today, all of those monsters, they still exist. And so, and finally it was my dad. My dad was the one, he came to me. And in Navajo, they say, Shiyaja, meaning my child, and they say, Shiyaja sha'awe, my baby. He says, it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead and get a divorce. It's okay. He says, you have your prayers. Your prayers been said. He says, go ahead and just give everything up. He says, go ahead and let the baby go. At that time, I had my son. He was 2. I prayed so hard. I finally got him. He came to me. I was blessed. My son came running. And it was really hard to leave that because he said, you have to think for him. When you leave that beautiful home you made in your marriage, he says it's for him because that's what he knows. Because that's his atmosphere. Leave the couches there, leave that kitchen table like that for him, for his mind, for his upbringing. He says, all of that is replaceable. He says, but you, my child, your heart is not replaceable. Your mind is not replaceable. Your spirit is not replaceable. You're wonderful. You're beautiful. In times like that, you just think, you think less of yourself. And I'm sure some of our listeners out there, maybe they went through, something similar. Maybe they're going through something like that right now. So I'm telling you right now, you are beautiful. You are wonderful. You are intelligent. You are handsome. You are a warrior. And so I'm letting you know that now. If you never heard that, now you know. I just want to say aho to that. And so, but from there, it was hard. And then I went through and man, this guy, he wouldn't give me anything. He wouldn't even allow me, then I was in rodeo. He wouldn't even give me horse panels. He told me, I remember in court, he told me in front of everybody, he says, you came with nothing, you leave with nothing. That's what he told me. Oh man, I was like, wow, we built a beautiful home. We had an arena, we had a barn, indoor stable, real nice steed of horses. It was wonderful. It's like, wow. And I really enjoyed that, had a tractor and what have you. It was really, really good. And so I left it. And then that's where I had nowhere to go. I didn't want to go home. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed, because, it was against the teaching, the way I understood it. But then my parents, it wasn't like that for them. But that's just kind of in my mind at the time, maybe some of our listeners feel that way. Some people say, when you turn 18 years old, you got to go. That's a rule, I guess, in some home. I don't know where that rule came from, but they say, you're 18, you got to go. But us Navajos, we have 45-year-olds still living with mom and dad. We have, because it's just our connection and our love to our children. We have that unconditional love, and that's where, when things go wrong with our children, we're always allowed to come home. They're homestead, they're fed, prayers are said, encouragement. Sometimes there's scolding too involved. I already told you not to drink. That's what happens when you drink. Like that. Our elders scold and, hey, that's why you don't do that. It's your own fault. You need to straighten up. So that happens. But it's all out of love. It's love. Sometimes people don't see it like that. When somebody holds you accountable, we see it as, depending on our mind frame, we see it as where, like Man, they don't understand. Then you pout, whatever, So there's some people, they get like that. And that's okay, because that's the process. And so, but to get to my point, basically, that's how it was. That's how we were raised. And, I became homeless because I was ashamed to go home. And over here, my current job, then I was trying to ask for like a nursing quarter. And they just kept saying, oh, yeah, next month. And so I just figured like, oh, okay, well, I guess their decision's around the corner. I'll be all right for a month. A month turned into 2 months. 2 months turned into 4 months. 6 months turned into a year. And I was in my car. I had all my stuff in there and, whatever I took from the divorce, and it was just mainly my clothes. And then at the same time, I was studying. I was doing my doctorate program at ASU. And that's where, on Navajo Nation, we don't have the rural nice broadband capacity, just like in the cities. Like cities, they have a variety, Verizon, Xfinity, whatever. They get real fancy. But Navajo Nation, we have like the local, like NTUA, Frontier, and, of course, our land base is, wide. Sometimes, to get to the nearest hospital is 100 miles away. To get to the nearest Walmart is 100 miles away. That's how wide we are. So with that said, that broadband, it only can go so far. Even HughesNet ain't nothing on the reservation. So that's where we had to go, to where they had, Wi-Fi. And what I did was, I got smart. McDonald's, when you're at McDonald's, they have free Wi-Fi. So I used to park outside and tap into their Wi-Fi, and I used to get in my class. It was all, online, hybrid. And I wrote some of my best papers in my car, And when I had to defend my dissertation, it was out of my car. I sat in there, I did my defense and in my car, and just like, there must have been something in my car. I named her Pam. She was a Chevrolet Malibu. And me and Pam, man, if Pam could talk, the stories she could tell, And so with Pam, it was just her and I all the time. And over here, I was trying to get custody of my son, and he was giving me a hard time with visitation and coming up with all kinds of stuff from A to Z. He must have really hated me, coming up with things that I just was like, what in the world, and like, I might as well say I was dating an ant or something. That's how bizarre it got. Yeah. And with that stuff, it started to get into my head. I started to internalize it. So I was fighting that trauma. I was fighting that hurt. Plus, I just got divorced. And then on top of that, I was homeless. And then over here, I was stressing about my finances because now I had to pay child support. And so all of it just became a big bag. And I'm sure some of our listeners, they're carrying a big bag, maybe 10 bags around with different types of, circumstances and emotions, And so, man, the bag got heavy, and but I always remembered my parents. Though they said, always have a prayer. Shiyaja, my child, no matter what darkness you're in, always have a prayer. When you give a voice to your pain, you can kill it. They used to tell me that in Navajo. And so I really believe that. So I just want to share that with the listeners out there. Give voice to your pain. Speak it. It'll overcome you. It'll come off you. And that's what they used to tell us. And I still do that today. When there's a pain, I feel something, in Navajo we say, pa, we blow it away, pa, pa, we say things like that. And so, but that's what I did. I used to cry and sit in my car. Sometimes I had no money to eat. I used to think, man, what am I going to eat? And sometimes I used to wish that somebody would invite me to their home so I could get a meal, and like, oh, man, right now I would like some hot bread, or right, man, a burger sounds good. And sometimes I would get in my car and dig around everywhere. And I'm sure some of you all did this, and find all my pennies, my spare change, and put it together and count it. It's like, all right, I have enough for a cheeseburger. all right, and it was a happy moment. Or I used to look for, remember the pop machines? We call it pop soda. Navajo, we say pop. So, but the soda machines, there used to be 25 cents back then for one can. So, man, you hit the lottery when you could find a pop machine.
Quarter.
Like, all right. So now you have your pop and your cheeseburger. That was a meal right there, So, I embrace those kind of moments, because, it really humbled me. It humbled me. And it really helped me to understand, where I was coming from and where I'm going. And, so today I'm always thankful. Today, I'm fortunate. I have a good income. I'm very blessed. And I get to, my kids will ask me for little things, Mom, we want some crabs. And I don't hesitate. Come on, let's go. And sometimes the bill's 110 and I'm like, oh. But then I always remember my cheeseburger days.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's all right. It's for them. So I look up the bill, and being a single parent, you kind of cringe. And I'm sure some of our listeners are single parents, you want the best for your child, but sometimes, it's hard and you cringe, but then you fork it out, because you don't want them to be what we went through. You don't want them to hurt. You don't want them to wish, like we did growing up. So you have that kind of love and protect them in that sense. And so that's what I went through. And then I was working out then, I was running, because I had a lot of time on my hand. I was in school. I get off work and, I didn't have no home to go to. And I used to like, what am I going to do, and sit in the car, sleep in my car. And so there they had a gym. It was a local gym and it was free to employees. And that's where I used to take a shower, wash up, and that's how I took care of myself. So just to provide, some encouragement to some of our listeners out there, if you're in a situation or a predicament, it's temporary. For now is not forever. So embrace it. And what I mean by embrace it is, remember it. It's hurtful. It'll bring you to your knees, situations like that. But there's always a teaching. And my dad always said that no matter what situation you go through, pull out a teaching. Once you pull that teaching out, you put it inside you. Once you walk it, it becomes gold. When it's gold, you teach it to others, no matter what it is.
I appreciate that. It's very clear to me that there's a lot to the traditions that you grew up with and also your personal experiences. I'm thinking about, growing up with what people on the outside would consider, poverty, mm-hmm. and, describing everything from the shack that was built to, the 10 gallons of water from pumping from an old school style well back and forth to the bathing of the family. And it makes me think of like, it's just interesting that some of those experiences were building up some sort of toughness in your body and in your brain. And then your dad, clearly talks about this idea of, the going through the pain and the challenges in the body, strengthens the mind. And then even in this case, when you talk about going through this experience of, having to go through this, what a lot of people experience is one of the more painful life experiences of a divorce, fighting with the children while finishing your PhD from a car, being homeless for a year, living out of your car, and how, for there's people who look at that and say, okay, at that point I fold, right? At that point I give up, right? The depression kicks in, and how this toughening of your life all the way through in so many ways that you shared in your story, on top of this idea of for now, what's for now is not forever, knowing that this is just toughening you or strengthening you, fortifying you for something better, is really powerful. You mentioned something about your grandmother, and I want to kind of switch tracks just a little bit before we get into the big question. Mm-hmm. And that question is, you mentioned her house being, the shape of octagon, and it reminded me of something else that has to do with physicality and running and training, which is that you train in mixed martial arts, and do some of that in an amateur level. And so, all this has come together for a career and for, the personal fortification, which is very powerful. But I'm kind of curious if you'd share with folks a little bit about that.
Sure. So MMA that was fun. That was tough. Um, so I've always, as a kid, I always wanted to. I was interested in fighting. I was interested. I remember when I was in sixth grade, I joined wrestling. As Navajos, we tell stories from way back before we make a point. So I'm just letting you know. So in sixth grade, I joined wrestling, but in my family, it was rodeo was favored, running was favored, and basketball. And so the only reason why I joined wrestling in sixth grade was because you couldn't join basketball until you were in seventh grade. So I remember I wrestled, and I've learned the chicken wing, the farmer's carry, things like that. And I liked it. But then no boys wanted to wrestle me. I put my wrestling suit on, and she's a girl, and I probably looked different. Obviously, they don't want to wrestle me. So I kind of, was sad about that. But that's where I developed an interest in it. And then after that, I used to watch, in high school, our PE classes would get canceled, but we would sit on the side and they would have like a wrestling meet. And we would watch, and I used to watch like, oh man, especially the lightweight wrestlers, they were pretty quick. It was awesome. And then after that, I always watched, fights, and I would go online and, watch like fist fights or street fights, whatever. And, I just always wondered about it. So at the time I was going through some stuff. I have two daughters, and their father, I met him, and he had issues with alcohol and depression, things like that. And he was basically following that. He was a slave to those things. And, there was infidelity. There was a lot of that, domestic violence, things like that because of the drinking. And he left me. He left us. He left us for a 20-year-old. Man, I was hurt. And I helped this guy. I pumped in my resources, my investment, because I cared. I loved him. I wanted him to excel, and I had hope that, he would appreciate it. But my dad always tells me, when you help people, don't talk about it because you take the blessing out of it. So I'll leave that right there. So, but anyway, I was angry with him. I was hurt. I was crying. Then at the time, I wasn't reappointed. And so I ended up with all the bills, and it just all came on me, and I was angry. I was mad at everybody. I was mad at men, and I just didn't, I don't drink. I never used alcohol, never used drugs. I don't go around, I don't visit different men, it's just not in me like that. But, I knew I had to, I needed to let this out. How do I let it out? So I remember I went to see this guy at a tattoo parlor, and I always remembered I had my cartilage pierced from college here. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was like, oh man, I should, I guess I was going through an identity thing. I don't know. So I got that re-pierced, and then we were talking about fighting. And that's when he told me, he says, I know this fighter. Her name is Nikki Garcia. He says, I should hook you up with her. And I was like, really? Because yeah. So he gave me the number, and so we kind of touched base, and then and she fights out of Albuquerque. She's a fighter for over 20 years, I believe. Trainer. She's a champion in wrestling, grappling, Muay Thai, things like that. So she's very well versed with MMA. So I hooked up with her, and we met in Albuquerque, and I got my membership at one of the dojos there, and then I started training with her. And I'm like, so like I don't know anything about fighting, and so I came in and just pumped up, ready to go, and then that's when they started introducing me to just the different styles. And usually people see fighting in a cage or whatever, they think, they're all crazy, they kind of have that mentality. But after studying it for a while, and I just studied the basics. I'm not like like Nikki, but it's an art. That's what I learned. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of thinking behind it. There's a lot of technique. There's it tests you on all different levels, and I understand that. And so my experience is like mitt work. Like I fell in love with mitt work, and I had to learn how like throw a jab and throw a cross and uppercut, rear uppercut. I had to learn that, all of that. And then thank goodness they have a number system. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So that helped me, and so I fell in love with it. The mitt work, I couldn't do it, but then I got good. It's like 1, 2, 3, slip, boom, and I got better the more I did it. And I don't know what it was, but it did something for me. It healed me in a sense. It just made me take my mind off all this stuff, all this pain, the emotional pain. It took my mind off, and it started to bring confidence back in me. And I wanted to fight. I was like, man, I think I can do it. It started building my confidence. And then I was watching other fighters, and then I started moving up, and then I started to spar. I started to spar, and I remember I sparred a lot out of Gallup because Albuquerque got too far for me to travel. So I sparred the guys, and I had a coach there. He was like, he was telling me, he's all, you never fought? I said, no. He goes, man, you're pretty good. He would encourage me. Then he would put all the big guys on me. There was no girls in there. It was the guys. I sparred with all different weight class, and they would say, all right, Segay, you can go 100%. You go 40. And we would touch gloves, and, and they would just like, it didn't even feel like 40. It's like, I'm like, oh, that was 40%. That was 80%.
Yeah.
Knock me out there. And I get mad, come back in. And so it just did something for me, something very positive, because I didn't know how, and I kind of had a Cardi B mouth on me for a while, running around like that, because I was angry. Mm-hmm. And then I started to weightlift more. I started to do a lot of endurance, and sometimes I would cry, like when I was sparring or when I was doing the bag, that emotional pain would kick in, and I'll probably cry. I'm sorry, guys, but I hold a high personal level of pride in this, because it healed me. And I would cry. I would do the bags, and boom, 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 and sometimes I would take my gloves off and just have my wraps, and I would just go at the bag, and my knuckles would be bleeding, but I guess I wouldn't feel it because I was so in tuned into the personal pain, and then sometimes, and I used to get sore, my knuckles, my forearms, I didn't know you could get sore in those places, Mm-hmm. So I've learned, and it helped me. And Navajo Nation is not big on MMA. When I went back and I wanted to practice, people didn't really welcome it, but that was okay. I had people that, supported me. They would pop up and they would hold my mitts for me. They would do things. And I was happy at one of the gyms, they put a bag up, it was a 50-pound bag, so I used to go there and work the bag and just did kind of my workouts that they showed me, and working on my skill. And Nikki, of course, lived in Albuquerque, so I would send her videos of, when I would shadow box, and she would tell me, finish through, finish out with your punches, follow through, and, she goes, quit winding your punches up, why are you winding your punches? She would tell me these things. So she introduced me, to some fighters, and I was fortunate enough to spar with some of them. Man, those girls are tough.
Yeah.
Some of them Puerto Rican girls, holy cow. They were really good. And, I would kind of get scared because they had tattoos, and you can tell when someone works out, you can see their shoulders, and they're kind of real stout. And so they put me up against some of them, and I guess and Nikki told me, she's like, man, you got some power, and and there was one I knocked down. I don't know what I did. I think I hooked her. It happened so fast you can't even tell. I think I hooked her. She fell, and some of those dojos, there's no filter. I remember her coach was like, get the beep up and get off my mat, beep, and he chased her off the mat. And I'm like, I stood there with my gloves, and I was like, oh, I kind of like, I stopped thinking I did something wrong. And kind of everybody turned around, and then that's when he got, and that was her house. I was a visitor in her house, and I knocked her out. So anyhow, that I was like, wow, and it gave me confidence. And anyhow, that was a really good experience. And then, but shucks, man, they were girls, my own weight class. I never got to spar against girls. I was sparring big Navajo men, they were bigger than me, so I was used to that. But man, afterwards, immediately I started to hurt, I guess there's that adrenaline. And I asked Nikki what happened. She says she front kicked you with her power leg to your rib. Man, I felt that for 2 months. I actually went to the hospital, the Indian Health Service, just to make sure it wasn't broken. So they checked it. They said, you're all right. And it took me a while, but oh boy, though, it really healed me. And at the time I was telling Nikki, I said, I want to fight. And this whole COVID came. And so, that's what it did for me, mixed martial arts, and I respect the sport. I found a dojo here in Washington. My son, he's in that dojo now. It's Pentagon MMA. So he's learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, BJJ. And so I kind of talked to them. I was kind of getting the itch, and I brought all my gear here. And I was like, man, and I asked him, how do you guys get in for a fight? What's your camp fight like? So they kind of gave me the numbers. And, I was like, oh, sounds good. Thank you, So that's what it did for me. It helped taper my anger. It calmed me down. It taught me self-respect. And the other thing I learned about fighting is you can't lie when you fight. When you put a front, you talk. When you're talking and say, I know this, I know that. But once you get in there, it'll reveal everything.
It'll expose everything.
You can't lie. You can't lie. And that's what I learned. And that really put me in check. So I carried that, analogy, those studies into my life. Stop talking. And here's a saying, don't talk about it, be about it. That's what I developed from that. I heard that some time ago with AA, and I used to facilitate AA a long time ago. So that's where I started to be about it. Don't just talk about it. Don't just wish for it. Don't just, and I'm sure some of our listeners are like that, just do it. Like Nike says, do it. And so that's what I do today. I really try, work hard every day. If I can't do something, I'll let you know that I'm incapable, or I don't know how, or, I'll get some help, so carrying that on this side, and so, but just to share about a little of the MMA there, and I know Nikki wanted to interview me, but I never got to her interview, but, I just wanted to thank her too. She's wonderful. She just recently had a grandson too. So she watches the fights with her new grandson. So it's wonderful. So, but I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get Nikki to listen to this episode once we get it published. We'll make sure we give her a shout out. Shout out to Nikki for sure. And congrats on the grandbaby. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm imagining you go through mitt drills or hitting a heavy bag and having this real processing feeling of these emotions, because that was a very difficult time. And I think about a lot of therapeutic kind of modalities where you have to process the traumas, you have to process the difficulties, and it's very difficult to just be in your head. Some people are like write, some people maybe journal, some people exercise, some people go through different types of therapy. But this idea of being able to work through a really challenging time personally through the midst and through this sport, what a great gift. I mean, the sparring sounds intense, especially going against people who are twice your size, and some of the repercussions, but it sounds like it was such a great gift. And again, more lessons to learn. So, we're going to take a little bit of a break. I just want to say real quick for listeners, make sure as I've listened to you share your stories, I just think that you're definitely a master storyteller, and you paint a really vivid picture, and you weave between all of these stories some really important touchstones and some important pieces. So that's the reason why I've been largely quiet, because I'm like, look, you got the mic, you're flowing right now, and when we wrap up this episode, we're going to edit it so that it's just like it is right now, because I want to listen to it 2 or 3 times, because there's all these notes that I don't want to even talk about right now. I wanted some time with this episode. But let's take a short break here real quick, and then we're going to get into the big question.
Okay.
All right. So as you know, Dr. Segay, this is the BestWorst27 podcast, where we have guests talk about a challenge, and you shared multiple challenges, and how you've kind of worked through them. But if there's a particular challenge that you haven't talked about, this is the time to talk about kind of what was that challenge? How did you get through it? And then what's like the takeaway point? Again, I honestly think that this episode is chocked with so many takeaways, but I want to make sure I give you at least one more space to provide kind of that prompt. And so, Glorinda, Dr. Glorinda Segay, you earned that doctorate from the car. What is your best worst thing?
My best worst thing? Well, basically, the best worst thing through my lifespan has been the teachings and the experiences and how I've used that to develop myself, to become better, to be the best version that I can be, in hopes that when it's my time for the holy people to take me, that I leave a legacy here, that I leave a positive, inspirational impact for those to carry those teachings, those experiences, and, feel it, with the hope that they want. So basically that's what I live for every day. And, but as far as my best experiences, is having my children, they got two, I got two baby daddy, and I'm sure that's the thing, the new fashion. But, I love my children, and they're my medicine. They're my motivators. I'm so blessed to have been picked to be their mother. I really think about them in a very good way. I pray over them. I wish my wishes, I watch what I do, what I say, because they watch me. And being a single mom, I'm very protective. Their fathers are not in a position now, to be genuine with them. So, and then of course, just, these experiences, just like with you, I grind every day. I look for these blessings, and I know something good is going to come of it. I believe that I can do great things. I had to learn that, though. I had to put these self-doubts away. And when you gave me a call, hey, we want to hear your story, I said, there it is. I hear you. I hear you, holy people. I hear you. And, those are opportunities for me to share, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who shared stories. There's famous people like, I like The Rock. I like Inky Johnson. I like all those guys, and they all share. They have a story. Steve Harvey, Oprah Winfrey. They all have a story, but for me, this is my story. For me, I'm Navajo. I come from American Indian bloodline. That's my story, the way it was on a reservation, and so with that said, I strive for those kind of blessings, and, I try to use it to my best of my ability in a sincere way, in hopes that, somebody out there, one of our listeners, they're going to be inspired. They're going to feel good. They're going to be happy. They're going to have tears in their eyes. They're going to feel hopeful for a new day. They're going to appreciate what they have, and that's my purpose. That's what I believe. And so just to answer your question, what's the best worst thing is just, but man, I tell you, pain is development. Pain is development. Every pain I've been through has developed me in some way, whether it was a breakup, a divorce. I was on food stamps at one point. I was on state Medicaid at one point. I was broke. I had $3 to my name several times. I had $20 to stretch for a month for gas, but all those moments have developed me, to this day, I carry my food stamp card. It's a reminder to me, has my name, my food stamp card number. And, sometimes I see it when I'm taking out when I pay my bills. It's a reminder to me that this is where I came from, and this is a place I don't want to go back to. So I carry that around. So little moments like that, just like store bread, we used to get the cheap store bread. You know how it crumbles. It just falls apart for 89 cents. And it's like, you make a sandwich and it falls apart. So to this day, I buy the most expensive store bread, because I remember that time. I understood where I came from. And they say, when you understand where you come from, you understand where you're going. That's another teaching. So that's where, I do little things like that. And I remember, I appreciate myself in that sense, and just my experiences. When we were small, we didn't have a shower, so and it might be gross to some people out there, but sometimes I don't wash my hair for 2 days, because that's what I'm used to. Sometimes I can't sleep on the bed. It's nice, good blankets, whatever, it's comfortable, but I feel like I rest when I'm on the floor, because that's how I was raised. That's what I'm connected to. Yeah. So that's what I mean by all my experiences from my upbringing to today. I do those things, but it's for me, for my understanding, to continue to stay strong, and I don't tell people, I don't go parade around and, I got to sleep on the floor because it's the only way I rest. I don't say that. But these are just for me. And I'm sure some of our people are like that, our listeners, they have little things that remind, So I'm and this might sound funny to some people, but I'm very thankful for the pain I've been through. I'm thankful for the divorce. I'm thankful for this guy leaving me for 20-year-old. Because otherwise I would be at home probably with 8 babies. I would probably, I don't know. But you just don't even know what your blessings are, your opportunity, what the path is for you by the holy people, the Creator, God, whatever you believe in. To me, they made a path for you, but it's you to discover. It's you to grind. It's you to put that hard effort, the hard work in, to make it happen. So, but to answer your question, there for you. I'll give it back to you.
Thank you. When I think back to this entire episode, I think about you are the embodiment of this podcast. This podcast was this idea of looking at a difficult time and trying to figure out a way to reframe it, to launch and utilize it to help better benefit and serve you. And I think the many stories that you shared in this interview embody that. Summing it up by, for now is not forever, but pain is development, and so many other things that you said. But what really stands out to me from our previous conversation and today, because you've mentioned this word multiple times, which is the grind. It's this beautiful grind, right? That we're willing to put in the work, whether it's running in negative 25 degrees in the morning in the mountains in the dark where your heart's pounding and you're concerned about if a wild animal is going to be out there and go after you, but the payoff at the end, or working hard on your doctorate from your car and using McDonald's Wi-Fi to get the best out of it. In the end, all of these things have fortified you to be this incredible person who now has been able to have this wonderful career where you can take care of those you love, and you can take care of strangers. You can take care of your people, and you can take care of others. And so it's all really come. I think I'm grateful that you put in the work. I'm grateful that you were willing to go through all of these difficulties and challenges and sacrifices in order to be in a position that you are. And I'm grateful that you showed up today to share your story. And I'm super excited that people get the chance to hear your story. So we're at the point where we wrap up, but if people want to get a hold of you or follow you or anything like that, what would you prefer? Is there a certain way you'd like people to get a hold of you?
It's usually through my personal email.
Okay.
So my personal email is basically my name, G as in girl, last name Segay, Samuel, Edward, Gary, Adam, Yellow. So gsegay@hotmail.com. So they can reach me there. I'll always respond there.
Perfect. For this for this podcast, I have a Gmail account, but I still got a Hotmail account as my personal account too. So I think we definitely have a lot in common here. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to hit stop on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, take care, and may the holy people bless you.
Thank you for listening to the BestWorst27 podcast. I'm your host, Josh Lewa. Music is produced by Josh One. You can follow him at BoomNote on Instagram and Twitter, and Josh One on Spotify. Our episodes are edited by Cool Jets Audio and Visual. You can follow them at CoolJetsAV on Instagram. Our marketing is designed by Francesca Daniels. You can find her at FrankandKitty24 on Instagram. And our overall design is by Inspired Design with Ryan Daniels. You can find them at getinspired.design on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Best Worst Thing.
Trailblazer, main face your optics. I rock this, cops this, blaze your boombox. The cool Cali kid from the boondocks. Bounce to your hood like chocolate with a crime on. Independent thing to play a beat, I get my rhyme on. So when I strut on a path to perfection, city to your borough, to your town, to your streets. Keep your party live, Josh One got beats out of nature. Grazer, Oakland, strays to Asia. Hits like Frazier, force of Fantasia. Move through your suburb, hiking in your